Well, good morning and welcome to Elevenses. I apologise for being a few minutes late this morning. I actually managed to talk to myself for 4 or 5 minutes before I realised I'd forgotten to press the button that said go live. So, to start the whole show again, um, but actually with a few people listening this time, what have I got for you today in show number 386 on Wednesday, the 22nd of November? Well, we'll be having a look at some new Spanish speed cameras, which have a kind of repeater camera with the idea of detecting vehicles that have actually slowed down for the main camera. Weird idea, but we'll have a look at that. A man has been robbed of his bike in broad daylight in the latest bike theft. A popular cafe has had to be partially demolished due to cliff falls in Sussex. A new perceptual countermeasure scheme has been put in place in two different countries, in Austria and Germany. You'll probably remember the Scottish trial I've been talking about recently. And a new sodium battery has improved the technology which could reduce our dependence on lithium, which could make things a little bit cheaper for car batteries. And Daewoo, you may remember Daewoo from many, many years ago. They look set to return with electric two-wheelers, which is interesting. We'll also look at an electric three-wheeler from Toyota, so car manufacturers definitely getting into the game there. And if you want petrol, then we can look at two 700cc triples from Zontes, a Chinese manufacturer. And then in the in-depth item today, we'll go back to group riding and near misses on those group rides. Right, so don't forget, if you have a question, if you have anything you want to ask, do drop me a line. I'll try to get back to you during the show. If not during, I will respond afterwards. I do love hearing from you all. All makes good sense, many of your questions, and often thought-provoking too. So, Kevin's looked in, Aaron from New Zealand is here, and Nigel's here as well. Good stuff. Good to see you all. So, right, what have I got for you today? Well, the first thing I just want to do is actually start with a quick reminder that the Science of Being Seen presentation went out on Wednesday night. I got some very positive feedback on that. I had Michael along. He's a driver. He's been someone who's been following me on Twitter for a while, or at least I should say, of course, the platform formerly known as Twitter. And this is what he said. He said, "This was a fascinating presentation. I highly recommend you tune into future ones to better understand how drivers can fail to see motorcyclists." And he said that it covers everything from vision to camouflage. And he's kindly ordered my Science of Being Seen book, which is very kind of him. Now, I actually have a somewhat modified version of the talk for drivers because I have actually been asked to present Science of Being Seen, which of course was originally aimed at motorcyclists. I've been asked to present it to mixed car and bike groups and even a couple of car-only clubs. So I have put more emphasis in those specific talks onto the preventative measures that car drivers can take to avoid the Smidsy crash, such as remembering to duck their heads left and right, to look round the A pillars, particularly when approaching roundabouts or roads at shallow angles, and also the B pillar, which is the one beside your head in the car, and look around that, particularly when you're sort of merging onto a road at a sharper angle. And the other thing, of course, is to slow down the look right, look left, look. No, I got it wrong, haven't I? Look left, look right, look left again. I can't remember which way around it goes now. I'll forget that. But anyway, the point being that what you do is when you're turning your head to look both ways, you slow it down. So instead of becoming a sequence of glances in both directions, it actually becomes a genuine scan right between that point there and that point there. So the 180 degree. I'm not getting things right this morning, am I? 180 degree scan. Now, Clive said interesting stuff as always. Brian said clear and interesting presentation, very useful and important info. Now, right now, the talk is still available on catch up. So if you haven't seen Science of Being Seen, you can head over to my coffee page. The link is just going up. You can grab yourself a ticket to the show, watch it as it's already been recorded. And don't forget, all the funding for this goes directly into supporting my further research. I don't get any money from anybody for Science of Being Seen, so I have to support all the hosting costs and all my research time myself. Meanwhile, look out for the next talk. It's going to be on the third Monday in December, on the 18th, and that'll be a good antidote, I suspect, to Christmas shopping. So do look around there if you can. And furthermore, don't forget the Black Friday offers. Now, I have a number of these already up online, and the most recent was actually online coaching. Now, whilst I talk about going online for these presentations, I also offer personalized coaching. So if you've got a riding issue, you've got a puzzle question, just drop me a line. I'll happily work with you via an online coaching session. And I've got a lot of experience, as you probably guessed, of running fix-it courses for riders with issues. So it's easy enough to actually convert that onto an online session, where importantly, we won't just talk theory. People get this idea that if you're online, you can only do theory. You can't. I can. It's not true. I can show you specific exercises. You'll have to go and do them, but they will help you sort out your issues. So these 60-minute sessions are normally £40, but right now I have a Black Friday offer. You can get a session for just £10. That's 75% off. Now, they won't be around for long because I haven't got many of those on sale, obviously at that price. But if you want one, here's the place to go for the Black Friday offer. Right. Okay, so on with the news. Right, so what have we got for you today? Well, let's start with Spain. Now, if you are riding in Spain, be warned. The Spanish authorities are rolling out right now a new form of speed camera. Now, this is a secondary camera which is placed near a fixed camera site to detect whether vehicles have slowed down to avoid detection and then possibly sped up again. So the camera will be on one side or the other. And the idea is that this secondary camera can be placed up to 1 kilometre away from the conventional camera. So Spanish speed cameras, if you've ever been riding in Spain, they are notoriously hard to spot. They're placed low at the side of the road, and they actually resemble a wheelie bin more often than not from a distance. And these new anti-braking cameras have been trialled, what's described as successfully, which presumably means they nicked a lot of drivers for using them as they went past them. And this was done in a pilot scheme in the northeast region of Navarra, and that was then extended across the Basque region, including the capital, largest city in the Basque area, Pamplona. And now it looks set for a national rollout. The cameras have been green lighted by the Spanish government's Transport Department, the General Directorate of Traffic. So will we get them here in the UK? Good question. Seems to me that if higher speeds are generally the problem, then the average speed cameras, which bring nearly everybody's speed down over the whole length of the road, are probably rather more efficient, particularly as many drivers and riders actually have speed camera locator devices on the bike. Waze, for example, will flag up a speed camera for you, warn you if you're over the limit. However, I can see one particular use for these if there's a specific problem area like a junction or a corner which has a history of crashes. Now, or a wide straight road in town where people actually exceed the speed by quite a considerable margin. That sometimes happens on particular roads. So if you kind of widen the area of uncertainty just about where your camera might be catching your speed, then maybe it would encourage drivers to slow down more effectively in the specific area where these are targeted than a single camera. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. You can go and find out about these if you ride in Spain. Keep your eyes open if you do. Let me just turn that banner off there. Now, another day, another brazen theft. This time it was CCTV footage from an industrial estate in the Wigan area, where the camera caught a gang fighting with a man before stealing with his bike, which was reported to be a Suzuki Bandit 1200. Now, the incident happened just before 6 p.m. on Friday, September the 8th. It was outside a timber yard, and from what I can make out from the story, the owner was actually standing beside his bike waiting for somebody else. When the gang rode past him on a number of other bikes, faces hidden, of course, by masks or scarves, clocked him and then rode back and surrounded him. And he attempted to fight them off, but there was a struggle. He was pinned to the ground, and the gang got away with the bike. Now, up to now, the bike remains unrecovered, and the police are predictably appealing for information. Now, I really don't know what to suggest here. You know, frankly, parking in a busy space where there are a lot of people around hasn't been a deterrent for some of these gangs. But one thing I would say is if you're standing next to the bike, it's no good taking the key out and locking it, or even sticking sort of some kind of immobilizing device on it, as if it's your bike, you'll be intimidated in handing the keys over. So the only thing I can think of here is to actually lock the machine, not just with the steering lock, but with a disc lock, and walk away, so that it's not obvious that you're connected with it. If you've used decent security, the thieves won't be able to smash it straight away. Remember, steering locks, we've seen how easily those are disabled. 10 seconds in many cases is all it takes to break the steering lock just by sheer force. And then you can push the bike away even if you can't start the engine. But if you've actually put a disc lock on it or something like that, at least you've got a chance to see the bike being attacked and then call the police, and they might not realize that you're connected with the machine. Now, whether the police respond, of course, to a theft in progress call is another matter indeed, but the gang might simply take a look at it and then move on to easier pickings. Right, now on to a slightly a cheerier note in some ways. If you know the south coast of Essex, you probably know the Burling Gap. It's actually a lovely stop to spot during a ride if you're down on the south coast. I've been there myself, not for a while, admittedly. Last time I visited the visitor centre there, which was located in an old hotel, it was actually closed and barricaded up. Now, I must have been lucky, because the first time I went, it was open. Now, the timeline is interesting because the visitor centre there was started in 2010 and finished in 2013, but it was closed in January 2014 due to a sequence of cliff falls over the period of 7 weeks prior to that, which actually took the cliff back 7 whole meters. And when I made that second visit, the cafe was shut for safety reasons. And if I remember right, even some of the outdoor seating area and part of the car park had also been lost. So my 2 visits must have been just after it opened and just after it shut. The coastal erosion is a natural feature of cliffs, and the softer the rock, the more rapidly cliffs recede, and chalk, not being particularly hard, falls away fairly rapidly, and that's what makes the cliffs actually so steep and so spectacular. The building itself is owned by the National Trust, and in February 2014 the Sun Lounge, the ice cream parlour and part of the west wing of the old hotel were taken down. Now, their latest plans include relocating the cafe away into the old visitor centre space, which is much further from the cliff edge, and they'll put a brand new welcome space in even further back behind that cafe. The section of building nearest the cliff is set to be demolished, and meanwhile the beach below is closed till further notice. But when it will be open for cuppers, I cannot tell you. I suspect it's a fair while yet. Right, okay, now moving on to the next story. Hopefully I've got the right picture ready for you. Yes, I have. I've reported for quite a few years, probably getting on for a decade now, about the motorcycle safety feature that are called perceptual countermeasures. Now, these use what's known as nudge psychology to elicit an unconscious reaction. If you don't know what I mean by nudge psychology, just look at what's on sale in your local supermarket as you are queuing at the till. Very often it's things that you will impulse buy. It used to be chocolate, but they're because the chocolate sales to children at the till were so successful they changed the rules and you can't put chocolate next to a till anymore. So it'll be things like chewing gum or batteries that you think, oh yeah, that's a good idea. That's what nudge psychology is. It elicits a behavioral change. And when used on the road, they are a response to the worldwide problem of riders running wide or cutting corners. Now, the aim is to keep motorcyclists central in their own lane, to stop them colliding head-on with oncoming vehicles. Now, contrary to popular biker belief, when you hear of a head-on collision between a car and a bike, it's almost always the motorcycle that has overshot the corner and not the car. Now, I first heard about these markings when they went on trial on the Coromandel coast. That's a loop around the peninsula in New Zealand. It's very popular for riders in North Island. Excuse me. But it's also an extremely technical and it's a challenging road, and it has a correspondingly high casualty rate. And on my trips in 2018 and 19, I did actually get a chance to ride through some of these trial sites. Now, my investigation at the time showed that this idea for paint markings originated years earlier in Australia. Although the fact is that perceptual countermeasures have actually been used in the UK. You only have to think about the rumble strips, those rather annoying thick lines of paint that you sometimes find on the approach to roundabouts on fast roads. Now what happens is, as you run over those, they get closer together, so the vibration speeds up, and what that makes drivers do unconsciously is actually slow down, which of course is the effect we just wanted. Now there's been a big trial going on in Scotland too for the last couple of years, reported on ELEVENSES, and despite a lot of scepticism, some fairly remarkable remarks actually from some riders on the bike forum where I spend my time. The results of that trial, which is the biggest in the world, has been genuine behavioural change as riders have changed their approach speeds and lines around those bends. Oh, I do apologise. I just have a little bit of a cold coming on, I think. Now, so the lines we can see here are actually from Austria, because these trials are now starting in Europe too. And this set of markings has been tried on 6 bends on the Grossglockner Pass, which of course is a popular biking route, 14 on roads in Styria, and 19 more in corners in the Tyrol. Now, according to the report, which is a little bit vague, after several years of testing, so I don't quite know how long, although there is some implication that this may have started in 2016, the report says no serious crashes occurred on the areas where the trial markings were made, and all crashes decreased remarkably or markedly on the trial corners, down 80% in the Tyrol. Although, of course, as we're not given precise numbers, that could be a reduction from 5 to 1, for example. And we also need a baseline over more, which is a bit more precise than several years, to see if we're not looking at a statistical blip. However, the cost is said to be minimal, around €1,000 a bend, and it's spread to Germany. They are now also trying perceptual countermeasures, although, as you can see, of course, being German, they have made it rather more complicated, and they're apparently trialling a mix of circles, ellipses and lines, and again they run down the centre line here to try to persuade riders to take a line that doesn't cut corners. So this is taking place in another popular biking area, the Panoramastrasse, which is in the Düren district of northwest Germany. That's up in the Eifel, if I remember correctly. Another very popular area to go riding. Lovely countryside, actually. And that's more than 30 crashes happened along this road on motorcycles on corners between 2021 and 2022. So I'll look with interest to see how that all pans out. Right, okay, so what else we got for you? Well, first things first, I shall just put up a reminder. Don't forget, if you do enjoy the show, do make a note in your diary to remind you it's every Wednesday and Sunday at 11. And you can subscribe to my YouTube channel too. You can like the video, and you can watch all the other content over there. All the videos there on catch up if you want to see them, Elevenses and all the others as well. Right, so on to the new battery technology that I mentioned at the top of the show. This is from a company called Northvolt. Now, they claim to have made a breakthrough in a new technology to be used for energy storage. And they say that what this could do is minimize the dependence on China for materials. Now, they're a Swedish startup. They have backing from Volkswagen, BlackRock, and Goldman Sachs. So, some fairly well respected companies there. And what they have done is developed a sodium ion battery, which obviously contains no lithium, but it also contains no cobalt or nickel either. And these are all components of conventional lithium ion batteries that have been in short supply recently, which has led to what's described as a volatility in prices. In other words, you might say they've gone up. But earlier this week, Northvolt announced that they had achieved a capacity of 160 watt hours per kilogram, and that's actually much closer to the energy density of the type of lithium batteries which are typically used for energy storage. Now, the sodium ion batteries also have the potential to be 25% cheaper than the lithium batteries typically used for energy storage. And they're the first non-Chinese company to have a sodium ion battery actually validated for this purpose. Now, sodium ion batteries aren't new. They've been around for quite a while. We've known about them for a long time. We also know that they have the advantage of working better at high and low temperatures than lithium ion batteries, but of course they are heavier. And they are less energy dense than lithium batteries. So put the two together, and that has deterred most car manufacturers from using them. Now, I did mention a Chinese manufacturer who, due to shortages of lithium, has actually installed sodium ion batteries in some cars. Now, there is still a way to go before you can match the lithium ion batteries used in electric cars. They generally have an energy density of 250 to 300 kilowatts per kilogram. So you're basically looking at a battery which has about half the energy density, but that's not the point. The idea is that this frees up materials, resources to actually make those lithium ion batteries and use them where it's essential to have small compact batteries which contain a lot of energy. Now, Northvolt hope that they will get the first samples out to customers next year, and they plan to get new factories built for full-scale production by the end of the decade. So it's not an instant fix, but we are at least on the right path with those, I think. Right, okay, so what next? Well, let's have a look at some motorcycles of a sort. This is the Toyota Land Hopper. Now, it's said to be one of those vehicles that's set to change personal mobility, and as you can see, it's a small electric trike. And as you can see from the footrest, it's not one that you pedal, it is fully powered. Now, there are a few technical details about this available, but we do know it's manufactured by Toyota, and it's been described as a cross between an e-bicycle and a moped, so it probably falls into this sort of low-powered category, which we've been talking about recently, where some European countries and Japan in too, apparently there's no requirement for a motorcycle license to ride one of these, and apparently it can be just ridden by anyone over the age of 16 in Japan, which suggests it has a restricted speed. So what do we know? Well, we do know that it folds, and Toyota believe that the bike will actually be perfect for stashing in the boot of a car, and then you can park the car somewhere convenient and then use this as the short range mobility solution to get to your final destination. Now, Toyota, you may know, are technology partners of Yamaha, but whether that this bike is built drawing on Yamaha's experience with leaning three-wheelers, I have no idea. But anyway, it's quite an interesting little device. Next question for you. Anybody remember the That'll Be the Daewoo advert? If you do, you're going back to 1995, which is the year that Daewoo arrived in Britain, promising to revolutionise car selling, because all their sales were backed up with the promise of 3 years of free servicing, in addition to 3 years of warranty. Unfortunately, by 2001, they were pretty much overshadowed by Hyundai and Kia. As the third South Korean manufacturer, they went bust with debts of around £12 billion. Now, the assets were actually bought by General Motors, the owners of Vauxhall here in the UK, of course, in 2002. But now it seems that Daewoo are set to make a comeback, and one way they want to do this is by expanding into the electric two-wheeler sector. So like companies before them, such as Porsche, BMW and Ducati, who have already launched electric bicycles, Daewoo is producing and selling electric bicycles, but they want to go the next step. They want to introduce electric scooters and small capacity electric motorcycles. Now, as Daewoo sets its sights on a comeback, the company is seeking to launch first of all in India, because as I've mentioned many a time on this show now, they are one of the fastest adopters of e-mobility in the world, and they have of course a surge of homegrown brands including Ola and Ultraviolette, both brands which I've featured with bikes here in the past. And they also plan to get involved with other energy storage products, including batteries for solar arrays. So that's Daewoo, long gone, but maybe coming back again. Now, the mad rush of motorcycles at the EICMA show has apparently come to an end, but rather than feature the obvious candidates, of course, what I did with when they were being launched is I tried to bring you the new models that may fly under the radar for most of us. So today it's turning again towards China, and specifically towards Zontes. Now, you probably have seen their bikes around in the UK. They do sell here, but they have previously focused on the lower end of the market, the Learner and the A1 licensed products. They have focused on bikes up to 350cc. But they are now the latest Chinese manufacturer to move upwards into the middleweight section, which has traditionally been dominated by Japanese and European manufacturers. And they also are the latest to exploit the benefits of a 3-cylinder engine. Now, if you leave aside Kawasaki's 2-strokes, historically it was Triumph, BSA, MV and Benelli, who all had some racing success with 4-stroke triple engines. Laverda obviously built some brutes of bikes for the road as well, which were triples. That was really a twin with an extra cylinder tacked on at one end. But if we go back in time to the period when the Japanese were switching away from 2-strokes to 4-stroke motors, it was Yamaha who brought out the XS 750 and XS 850 triples. I remember looking at the 750 myself with some interest, but unfortunately, aside from the inherent smoothness of a 120-degree 3-cylinder arrangement, the bikes themselves were a bit on the porky side. They did have a shaft drive, which was a bonus, but the reputation they got very quickly was they didn't handle particularly well, and they weren't altogether reliable either. Now, of course, more recently, you will recall the reborn Triumph brand. Back in the early 90s, that would have been. They produced 2 triples, a 750 and a 900 in their relaunch lineup, and whilst those machines didn't last too long, Triumph have maintained 3-cylinder machines in their lineup. The latest, of course, being the 660 Triumph Trident and the Triumph Tiger. Now, Yamaha actually came back, of course, with the triple engine with their own MT-09. That's apparently a decade old now. Seems hard to believe, and that triple has become something of a success. I now had the real pleasure of putting 3,000 miles on a 900 Tracer in New Zealand, and I loved the machine for its balance of smoothness, power when you twisted the throttle, and sheer rideability really in all conditions. So more recently, an increasing number of Chinese manufacturers have been interested in producing their own three-cylinder bikes, including CF Moto and Qiangjiang, who own Benelli, of course. Now, I've previously reported that Zontes were developing this three-cylinder middleweight, but now they have actually shown off a pair of concept bikes to feature the new engine. So let's just have a look at the first. Here it is. This one is obviously the Adventure Tourer. Now, as you'd expect from a new machine, there is in fact a new frame and swing arm to wrap around the motor, but the surprise is, particularly as the Japanese are increasingly going back to steel in their middleweights to keep costs down, that both these components are actually aluminium. The days of thinking that Chinese equals cheap are definitely over. The motor itself is a 699cc triple, but unlike many of the sort of mix and match platform restyles, you know, I'm talking here about the new twins from Suzuki and Honda, for example, the Zontes bikes get motors with subtly different tuning. So this is a ZT703F, a really catchy name, eh? And it has higher peak torque, 85 Newton meters or 60 pound-feet, and it comes in at a slightly lower revs of 7,200 RPM, as you'll see when I compare it with the sports bike, and that delivers us peak horsepower of 100 at 9,000 RPM, which is pretty punchy actually. However, let's have a quick look at the other bike, which is in fact the sports bike of the pair, and here it is. This is the ZT703, and you may have guessed it is in fact an RR model, and this has a lower peak torque figure, 75 Newton meters, and it's delivered 1400 RPM higher up at 8600 RPM, and the combination of lower torque and higher revs means a revvier engine, but it actually delivers an extra 10 horsepower, so it's up to 110 horsepower at 11,000 RPM. Now, unlike the adventure bikes generally focused on road riders, the Zontes road trail bike, adventure bike, let's come back to it there, it actually has, if you look closely, you'll find it's got a 21-inch front wheel rather than a 19-inch. And it gets an 18-inch rear, which is a slightly odd size too. The bike gets the usual high bars, peg set reasonably forward, protective bodywork, high screen, etc., etc. By contrast, whoops, I've gone to the wrong picture, there it is. The RR gets the clip-ons, gets the rear set foot pegs, so racy seating position, and you get those sort of racy aerodynamic bodywork, which you need a racing crouch to get the best from, plus 120/17 and 180/17 rear wheels. Both bikes get full electric LEDs. There'll be undoubtedly the 5-inch TFT screen on the front of it. I can just make out something flat in the display, but no details on that yet. How much? No idea, but as I've noticed the price of Chinese bikes creeping upwards and closing in on the supposedly premium machines from the Japanese and European manufacturers, it won't be that cheap, although I suspect they'll be competitive. Will they come to the UK? I don't know, but if they do, watch out Triumph and Yamaha. Right, okay, and so on to the final item today, and that is back to group riding. Now, last week I showed you a video of a rider following his buddy into an overtake and having a heart-stopping near miss with a logging truck. Now, that was in New Zealand. If you didn't see it, go back and have a look, because it really is quite scary. Now, the fact is that group crashes aren't unique to the Southern Hemisphere, of course, although they do a lot of group riding over there, I noticed. But it's largely because we have the same blind spots about riding with others wherever we live in the world. Now, last week I mentioned the effect of group psychology, which makes riders behave differently when they're with others. I also talked about group dynamics and how everybody behind the leader is always playing catch up, particularly when the leader starts overtaking slower vehicles. And I suggested that the answer to many group riding issues is to create a team spirit where riders actually ride for each other, rather than simply to get the max out of the ride for themselves alone. So how can we spot riders who don't play well with others? Well, look for some disruptive behaviour. The sort of things that I see regularly on a group ride is impatience with a rider that is slower. So you're quicker than the guy ahead, you'd like to pass. Well, the answer is don't hassle them. I've watched regularly, all too often, quicker riders sitting right on the tail of the rider ahead of them, bobbing left and right in the lane to get better views, probably just like they were taught on their advanced course. But I can tell you from the position of being in front of one of those riders, it is incredibly distracting. And, frankly, I'm not one to be distracted easily these days. So if you're looking to pass a slower rider or a less experienced rider, particularly, just hang back, take your time. The reason is simple enough. When the rider ahead of you feels pressured from behind, two things will happen. They will either speed up and start overriding to avoid holding you up, or they'll start watching you in the mirrors rather than road ahead. And this is how many accidents happen as a rider in the middle of a group runs inexplicably off the road. The reason is often that they weren't actually looking at the road ahead. And the danger is if you're following them really close too, they'll take you out because you'll be so focused on them that you won't see what's coming either. So another consequence of hassling riders. Well, what they tend to do is slow down and try to pull to the left in the daftest places to try to encourage you to pass. I had somebody come to an almost complete standstill in front of me in the middle of a left-hand blind bend. I wasn't going to pass there. Probably my fault for following a bit too close, but also the rider in front being a bit too sensitive to riders behind. And what, of course, happened was the group bunched up behind me, and somebody from further back came all the way around the outside of all the rest of us who were waiting till we could see where we were going on the wrong side of the road into a blind left-hand bend. It was luck rather than judgment that saved them from meeting someone coming the other way there. So if we don't have to slow down, we don't bunch the group up too. So be patient, let the rider ahead keep going at their own pace. And if somebody wants to pass you, that's their problem, not yours. Right, and also be patient if the rider ahead is trying to pass another vehicle. Not everybody is confident with overtaking, and sometimes they will miss opportunities that a more experienced rider, a braver rider would have taken, and sooner or later somebody blitzes the overtake, usually of course just as the other rider starts to pull out. So wait your turn, no matter how long it takes, you'll get past eventually. But even if you're not hassling the rider ahead, there are other big dangers from the groupthink of multi-bike rides. And the most obvious one is trying to keep up with a rider ahead who's faster. What happens then, of course, is we are no longer riding our own ride. Now, once we begin to stress about speed, several things happen. We tense up. We stop scanning ahead. We actually start scanning closer to the front of our bike, and in particular we start watching and fixating on the rider ahead of us, and then of course our riding goes ragged because we're not seeing problems a good distance ahead. So let the faster rider in front go, and similarly, as I said, if a rider behind catches up, don't try to speed up. We can move over perhaps on a nice straight empty bit of road, but again, don't make silly efforts to let people pass. So hold your line when you need to get round a corner or whatever, or past a dangerous looking junction. It's up to the rider behind to pass you safely, not for you to make things easy for them. The moment things start to surprise and scare you, just back off and don't try to ride at the pace of the rest of the group. Now, even when riders are well behaved, riding in groups, riders still have a scary tendency to move up into the wheel tracks of the bike in front. And then, of course, we end up looking at the tail light of the bike in front. The bike in front speeds up, we speed up. Bike in front slows down, we slow down. The bike in front, the rider cocks up, and we follow them straight off the road too. Or in the event of a sudden stop, you might not. And now this happens all too commonly on group rides. It's happened on group rides I've been involved in. And of course, while we're focused on what's going on, when probably not checking our mirrors if we're too focused on what's in front. So try to play by group rules. Now, you've probably heard about staggering on wider and straighter roads, and there's nothing wrong with that. You just ride alternately on opposite sides of the lane, one bike to one side, next bike to the other, but it does require everybody to understand how it works and to play the game. Now, it is particularly useful in towns because it makes the group much shorter, makes the group more compact. So not only do we take up less distance on the road, which helps avoid annoying other drivers, but because the gaps are smaller, it stops or helps prevent drivers actually pulling straight into the middle of the group, which does happen with big group rides. But there's always one rider somewhere who won't stagger, or who picks the same side of the road as the rider ahead, or just switches at random. I can't tell you how frustrating that is to follow if that describes your riding. But when you get onto twistier roads, don't try to stagger. Use one line and sit well back. Open those gaps up, look past the bike in front. And here's my number one tip for group rides. If you find yourself consistently getting sucked into trying to keep up or following too close, drop back. Drop back till the rider ahead of you is actually out of sight. You'll have a marking system. Trust it. If it works properly, there's no need to worry about getting lost. Somebody will be waiting for you where the group turns off. That way, when you can't see the rider ahead, you can focus on your own lines. You can pick your own speeds. You can choose your own braking points. You can choose your own cornering lines. And most importantly, you choose exactly how to deal with each hazard as you encounter it. So that is how you actually apply the bit of advice that you hear so often, but without any explanation on how to do it. That's how you ride at your own pace. Drop back out of sight of the rider ahead. And as I say, be alert to peer pressure. If the ride's just too fast or too mad for you, just quit, leave it. Think independently. Don't perform in the way that you want to, you think other people would want you to ride. Do your own thing. Now, as I say, group riding can be a lot of fun if we're playing well with others and we're riding our own ride within the group, but also working as a team with others. That makes life easier for everybody. But crash stats show just how often motorcyclists are overrepresented on, or I should say how often motorcycle group rides are overrepresented in the crash stats. So why don't riders play well? Well, sometimes it's peer pressure. As I said, none of us want to hold up a group. Sometimes it's grandstanding, and you will find riders on group rides who try to show off their skills. And finally, it's inattention. It's all too easy to get into this follow my leader, brainy neutral behaviour. And also, there is, of course, the fear of getting left behind. But if you organise a group ride well, that shouldn't be a problem. Right, okay, so I've run on a little bit longer than planned. I have a comment from Nigel. He says, if I think the rider I'm following is faster in a hurry or more experienced, I tend to drop back and ease over rather than get fixated watching somebody on my back wheel. That is how it should be done, but I can tell you from following less experienced riders that they will spend most of their time gawking at the mirror rather than watching ahead if they are worried about being overtaken. So that's one of the reasons I tend to put, if I'm organising a group ride, I tend to put the inexperienced riders at the back, not at the front, because they won't be worried so much about holding anybody up. They'll just have the sweeper behind them and everybody stays happy. Anyway, good comment there, Nigel. Thank you very much for that. Right, that is it for today's show. Now, don't forget, subscribe and like these shows, please. I very much appreciate it if you do that for obvious reasons. And you can check out my other videos on my YouTube channel, 60 Second Safety, 60 Second Science. There'll be a new one of those going up tomorrow with a bit of luck. And please tell your biking buddies about Elevenses. I'm always happy to get new viewers. That's it from me today. Don't forget the Black Friday offers are available on my coffee page. Just go to the shop and have a look for them. I did have a link somewhere for you for that, but I seem to have lost it. Oh no, it's already gone up, hasn't it? Coffee, there it is, Coffee Survival Skills Shop. That's the one. Go and have a look there, see what's on the Black Friday offers, and grab yourself a bargain. Right, okay, so if you are out there on the bike today, do stay shiny side up. The weather for the next few days does look a little bit on the mixed side, and it's getting colder.